worst headline of the day was not the Reuters headline, Defenders Rally Around the Pope, Fear Conservatives Escalating War. The worst headline of the day was this from the New York Times. Vatican power struggle bursts into open as conservatives pounce. So this has become sort of a meme on the right, is that when the media report on issues that are harmful to the left, it's never leftists within the church defend Pope as he covers up sexual abuse allegedly. That's not the headline. The headline isn't leftists in the media cover for Pope as Pope undergoes allegations of sexual abuse cover-ups. That's not the line. The line is conservatives pounce. So when it is a grave sin on the part of somebody on the left, it's conservatives pounce. When it's a grave sin on the part of somebody on the right, it's the conservative committed the sin. That's the way the media cover these issues. That's the way the New York Times covers these issues. So when it's Duncan Hunter involved in a corruption scandal, then it's Representative Duncan Hunter of California, Republican, involved in corruption. And then when it is a Democrat, when it's Senator Bob Menendez from New Jersey, when there are allegations made about him of sexual abuse, for example, or corruption, when instead of it saying allegations of corruption made about Senator Bob Menendez, it's conservatives pounce on allegations. Like, why is that news? I'm so confused as to why that's even news. Why isn't news how conservatives react to an allegation of sexual abuse cover-up by the Pope? Isn't the news the sexual abuse cover-up by the Pope? It's such an insane statement. You'd never see that in reverse. You'd never see liberals pounce as allegations of Trump corruption mount, because then that puts the onus on liberals to explain why they are pouncing. Instead, it's allegations of Trump corruption mount. But this is how the New York Times covers the issue. And here is the way that they have decided to cover this. Quote, since the start of his papacy, Francis has infuriated Catholic traditionalists as he tries to nurture a more welcoming church and shift it away from culture war issues, whether abortion or homosexuality. Who am I to judge, the Pope famously said when asked about gay priests. That is the first paragraph of a story about a Pope who is alleged to have covered up sexual abuse and molestation inside the church. The first paragraph is about what a great guy Pope Francis is for not paying attention to social issues like abortion and homosexuality. Is it possible that the Pope's reason for ignoring some of those issues is specifically because he does want to focus on those quote-unquote bigger issues the left likes, and he knows the media will help cover for him? That's not even the worst of the New York Times article. We'll get to that in just a second. So the New York Times article continues. It says, just how angry his political and doctrinal enemies are became clear this weekend when a caustic letter published by the Vatican's former top diplomat in the United States blamed a homosexual current in the Vatican hierarchy for sexual abuse. It called for Francis's resignation, accusing him of covering up for a disgraced cardinal, Theodore E. McCarrick. Okay, that's an insane statement. How the focus is on how angry they are? Oh, wow, look at these people. What's making them... You mad, bro? That the Pope was covering for sexual abuse, allegedly? Yes, I'm angry. Yes, Vigano was angry. Yes, conservatives inside the church and liberals inside. Why is this a partisan issue? Why is the Pope covering for sexual abuse a partisan issue? By the way, it wouldn't be a partisan issue if the Pope's name were Benedict. If the Pope's name were John Paul II. If it were John Paul II, there would not be any of this blowback from the New York Times, because then it would be targeting a conservative Pope. But because we are targeting a Pope who's liberalizing on a bunch of issues the New York Times likes, then it's all about conservatives pounce. With the letter, reports the New York Times, released in the middle of the Pope's visit to Ireland, an ideologically motivated opposition has weaponized the church's sex abuse crisis to threaten not only Francis' agenda, but his entire papacy. Weaponized? Now, this is a word that the New York Times is using a lot lately. So we've heard from the New York Times that conservatives are weaponizing the First Amendment. That conservatives are, using the free speech part of the First Amendment in order to push their view. Ooh, weaponizing the First Amendment. So the issue isn't that the left wants to shut down the First Amendment. The issue is that the right is, quote unquote, weaponizing the First Amendment. Now the issue isn't that conservatives are trying to stop sexual abuse inside the Vatican. No, now the issue is that they are weaponizing sexual abuse inside the Vatican. It seems to me that if you were going to worry about weaponizing sexual abuse, maybe you ought to start with a Vatican hierarchy that looked the other way and put abusive priests back in positions to abuse more children. Would that not be weaponizing sexual assault against innocent people? It's not weaponizing sexual assault to accuse people of covering up sexual assault. That's not weaponizing anything. That's called telling the truth. Okay, but what's the New York Times' real agenda? It's the next sentence. At the very least, it has returned the issue of homosexuality in the Roman Catholic Church, which many conservatives are convinced lies behind the abuse crisis, to the center of the debate. Well, this is really where the New York Times gets concerned. What the New York Times is deeply concerned about is that there's going to be a lot of talk about homosexuality within the church, and we can't allow that. We can't allow that. Now, what's weird about this is that homosexuality is banned by the Catholic Church. At least homosexual activity is. And the toleration of homosexual activity inside the Catholic Church is a violation of Catholic canon law and has been since the inception of the Catholic Church. There's a 3,500-year tradition in Judeo-Christian religion of banning homosexual activity, or at least opposing homosexual activity. It's pretty clear here that what the New York Times really wants is for the Catholic Church to ignore the fact that there's a violation of Catholic canon law going on inside high levels of the priesthood. The New York Times says Vatican intrigues and power struggles are nothing new, but they usually remain within the medieval walls or fly over the heads of the Catholic faithful around the globe. This battle, however, is being waged in an exceptionally open and brutal manner. This is an objective news story. It's exceptionally open and brutal. How about the media uncovering all these sex abuse scandals in the first place? Was that exceptionally open and brutal, or was that called good reporting that they were supposed to do? But it's exceptionally open and brutal when it turns out that this sort of thing ties into a homosexual subculture within the church. When the two correlate, and again, that doesn't mean causation, when the two correlate, then the New York Times is more interested in protecting the homosexual subculture of the church than in protecting children. Okay, that is what is going on here. What is going on is that the New York Times and folks in the press are more interested in protecting their social agenda within the church than with protecting children. Because if it comes down to a choice between targeting people like McCarrick, who apparently was having sex with seminarians, and protecting children that McCarrick was also abusing, they would prefer to preserve McCarrick at the cost of the children. That's all I can take away from these press reports. These accusations in the letter remain unsubstantiated, says the New York Times. Really, would they treat them as unsubstantiated if they were against Pope Benedict? Or would it be on the front page of every newspaper ever? Asked Sunday night about their validity, Francis said he would not dignify them with a response, which is, of course, a non-response. And that is dignifying them with a response. If I ask you if you sexually abuse children, and I have a credible allegation from people who know you, and you say, I'm not going to dignify that with a response, or I don't know, I'm not going to say yes, I'm not going to say no, I think it's fair to say that we should have some serious follow-up questions. They are serious, says the New York Times. The Pope's vague answer has only heightened public interest, particularly in the core accusation that he was told about Mr. McCarrick's history of sexual relations with seminarians and did nothing about it. But Francis's non-answer is in keeping with his reluctance to give oxygen to a small, if influential and noisy, group of conservative prelates and writers aligned with the author of the letter. So it's all a political war. That's all this is. It's just a political war. And then I'm supposed to wonder that people on the right don't trust the media when they're willing to cover for a pope who may indeed be covering up for sexual abuse of children and seminarians because they like the Pope's agenda? Fully insane. And that's not the limit of how far the media went in the last couple of days on a variety of issues. We'll get into their insane defense of Antifa in just a